Public participation is encouraged through the webinar or by calling 888-788-0099, webinar ID 984-6632-4425. Public comments will be taken on each agenda item following staff presentations. Callers can press *9 to raise their hand to indicate a desire to speak on an item, or webinar participants can use the raise hand function. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Pursuant to section 2-70-30 Broomfield Municipal Code, no elected official or member of any city board, authority, or commission may appear before the Neighborhood Board of Adjustment when it is conducting a quasi-judicial proceeding. The Neighborhood Board of Adjustment meeting is called to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Nelson?
Here.
Reed? Reed?
He's trying to unmute.
He's here. Yeah, he's just trying to unmute.
Okay. I'll come back.
You can unmute with the space bar, but it didn't work. Okay, here, sorry.
Hertel? Orlando?
Here.
Taylor?
Here.
Hardwin?
Here.
Opog Johansson?
Here.
Orman?
Here.
A quorum is present. A quorum is present. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, we will call on each member of the board for an opportunity to comment at the conclusion of staff's presentations or updates. If making a motion or a second, we ask that the board members use the raise hand function. Board members are asked to mute their microphone when not speaking, please. We'll begin by selecting a chair and vice chair for 2021. I will now open the floor for nominations for chair.
This is Larry Hardwin. I'll nominate myself.
There's a nomination for board member Hardwin. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll close the nominations. The nomination to select the chair, I'll ask for the secretary to please call the roll.
Nelson?
Aye.
Hardwin?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Orlando?
Aye.
Orman?
Aye.
Opog Johansson?
Aye.
The nomination to select board member Hardwin passes unanimously. Chair Hardwin, you can take over the meeting now. Thank you.
So next we will elect a vice chair, and I'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate myself for vice chair.
I heard your voice. I can't see you on the screen. Could you say your name?
Tom Orlando.
Hi, Tom. Are there any other nominations? Then I will close the nominations and call for a vote. Can we go through the vote list?
Nanette, you're muted.
Taylor?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Opog Johansson?
Aye.
Orlando?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Hardwin?
Aye.
Orman?
Aye. Is that everyone?
Yes.
Then we have all ayes. The nomination for vice chair has passed unanimously. And now I'm going to move on to bylaws. Has anyone not been able to read the bylaws? That's where we're going next. So next item of business is discussion and consideration of the Neighborhood Board of Adjustment bylaws. Is there any discussion of the bylaws? I cannot see every raised hand, so I don't know, Brandon, if you can help me, or go ahead, Michael. And you're muted.
Sorry, I raised my hand because you asked for it.
No, that physically is good.
Chair, there are no hands raised.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion? Brandon, is it okay if I make the motion?
I would ask Christine to interject there. I'm not sure what the standard procedure on that one would be.
Sorry, I was responding to urgent message. You
Also
But
move
we-
to pass the bylaws, to accept the bylaws.
yeah, it would be helpful to have a motion and a second, and then a vote.
I second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the existing bylaws as is. Nanette, can you make a roll call?
Taylor,
Yes, aye, yes.
Nelson,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Orlando,
Aye.
Opog Johansson,
Aye.
Mormon,
Aye.
Hardawin.
Aye,
That's everyone.
thank you. The motion to adopt the bylaws has passed unanimously. And that's all for section 3. The next section is review and approval of the agenda. So we have 3 items, 3 variances to consider on the agenda today. So now is the time to review and approve this evening's agenda. Any board member may revise the order of business for the meeting, or board together we can revise. Does anyone have any comments, questions, suggestions for this evening's agenda?
I have more of a general question in regards to all of the variance requests are very similar, and I'd like to know a little history on what are the parameters around why they would have been approved in the past and why these would or would not be approved as of today.
I can start off with that one and then hand off to Christine. So at the end of all the memorandums, there is a section of municipal code sections that provide guidance of elements that should be considered for either approval or denial. Previously, the Planning and Zoning Commission would take those under consideration, as well as the evidence that's presented both in the written documents and in the verbal presentations and comments that are received today, and take that into consideration. So the municipal code sections at the end of the memorandum help to guide those decisions. That's really the basis of decision making. Christine, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, I do not. If we end up with more questions, I'll try to answer them, but not at the moment.
Okay,
Thank you.
go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a naive question. Informally, what is the role of HOAs in interacting with the Neighborhood Board of Adjustments?
I'll go ahead and answer that one. So we do, when there is an HOA or an architectural review committee, the staff are looking for them to weigh in. Ideally, we have that information. We know whether that group supports the variance or not. And that is So I have, for example, drafted, just so everyone knows, proposed findings for both denial and approval for each of the variances for tonight. And if an architectural review committee or an HOA has supported it and the item is approved, one of the findings could be that they supported it. And that goes along also with the neighborhood support if we've gotten letters from neighbors supporting it. So there is nothing to say that you could not or should not approve a variance if an HOA or another entity is against it. It's just part of what you take into consideration. I hope that helps.
Good.
Any other topics or anything anyone wants us to consider for revising the order that we're about to go through? All right, then we will continue on. Petitions and communications. Mr. Rowe, very formal. Are there any petitions or communications?
Chairman, there are not, but I do want to circle back to your question earlier regarding whether or not the chair can make a motion before we head into the business items tonight. You are able to make a motion if you so choose.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, then normally at this point, we would approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Just so you know, this is where we would do that. There is no previous meeting, so we will keep going. The first item on the board's business is for Country Vista, filing number 2, lot 24, block 3, variance for a shed. I'll declare the public hearing open. Before we go into the staff summary, which is next, I'm just going to walk through the steps to make sure we're all aligned on how this proceeds. So we're going to have a staff summary first. We will have, if the applicant is on the phone with us, an applicant presentation. Then we would have public comments of anyone dialed in. So we get to listen and then have board member Q&A, questions and comments. And the way that'll work is Nanette will call on each of us in order to see what our questions and comments are. So it's not just sort of a free-for-all, it's we'll go in order as Nanette calls people for question and comments. After each of us has had a turn, then there'll be a, does anyone have anything else to talk about? We will then close public comments, and then we will proceed for a resolution. So since this is our first go, I just want to make sure people have sort of the high level view of where everything fits in. I'll pause for a moment. Okay, so I think we're ready. Kayla, I think you're up for staff summary number 1.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. And if you could go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. The applicant has requested approval of a variance at 4457 Winona Place to permit the construction of a shed located approximately 2 feet from the side property line. Please enter the memorandum and supporting documents into the public record. The property is a single-family dwelling zoned planned unit development and is located in the Country Vista filing number 2 subdivision. The property is located to the north of Winona Place, adjacent to single-family residence to the east and west. Next slide, please. The approved Country Vista filing number 2 site development plan has established a required side yard setback of 5 feet, which does not allow for the proposed 10-foot by 6-foot shed to encroach. Additionally, there is a 5-foot drainage easement on the eastern side of the property line, which the shed will encroach on. The applicant would like to request a variance to permit the pergola to be located approximately 2 feet from the side property line, an encroachment of approximately 3 feet into the side yard setback. The proposed shed will provide additional storage space and clear room to store a vehicle inside of the garage. It will also keep the rear yard free to be used by the applicant's children. Next slide, please. The proposed shed will be a tough shed brand around 10 feet in length and 6 feet in width. As mentioned in the letter of justification, the side of the home is built approximately 11 feet from the side property line. The shed will need to be placed approximately 3 feet away from the side of the home to enable maintenance of the air conditioner, vents, and the side of the home itself. And next slide, please. Thank you. The applicant has received approval from the homeowners of the single-family homes located to the east at 4437 Winona Place and to the west at 4477 Winona Place. There has been no additional correspondence from the surrounding community. Thank you, and that concludes the staff summary.
Thank you. So the next step is the applicant presentation is now in order. Is the applicant here with us today?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Okay. I'm not sure if someone's going to share a presentation for you, if you're going to share it. Do you have a presentation to show us, or is this a verbal only?
I do not have a presentation. I
Oh,
was
that's fine.
aware I needed one.
No, you don't need one. Just checking. Okay, so the floor is Christine, a question for you. Is there a time limit for the presentation?
That is an excellent question. I think that
Oh, it's 30 minutes. That's what I remember from the bylaws.
something in the bylaws. I just don't remember exactly what it is.
Brandon, are you keeping time, or is someone, just in case, hopefully we won't need it, but in case we do?
Chairman, I'll keep an eye on the time, but I'm not sure if we'll need the full 30 minutes for the applicant presentation.
Yeah, it's always just bad to get to the end and not have done it. So I appreciate that. Okay, applicant presentation. All the floor is yours.
Okay, I think Kayla covered the most of everything that I was looking for. I'm not sure that I have anything additional to add there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so the next step is public comments. I don't know, do we have anyone on the phone with us, Brandon, that may want to comment?
I do not see anyone in the queue, but if there's anybody in the queue, please raise your hand so Jake can see you and pull you over.
Okay, sounds like we do not have any public comments. All right, we will now call on each member of the board for comments. It says comments. I think it's comments and questions. Hold on a second. Yeah, so Brandon, as a point of order, I think now is both comments and questions. The script simply says comments. That's why I'm asking.
That is correct, Chair. So if any of the board members do have comments or questions to the applicant or staff, now would be the time to ask those.
Okay. Nanette, would you please call the roll and again, comments and questions?
Orlando,
I deal with a lot of these structure requests close to the property lines often, and our biggest concern with them is in the event there is a fire in the structure, it's very close to the neighboring property and the property of the main home in the property itself. So I think we should take that into consideration, that if the house burns, then the shed burns, and then the house next door burns, where right now there's good enough gap in between them to where the fire department could potentially save the house next door.
Thank you.
Opag Johansson,
I do not have any questions at this time.
Nelson,
I was wondering if any consideration had been given to the color so that it ties in with the existing home instead of just sort of plopping down a stock tough shed color, and whether any consideration had been given to doing more of some sort of a different roof line that wouldn't look quite so, straight off the lot at Home Depot. Something that would either be just a slant shed roof, like a salt box. Yeah, something like that maybe. These are just sort of design details to make it fit in a little more.
Sure, yeah. So I'm actually, the picture there is of one I built at a previous house. So the shed that will be installed here will be the same color as the house now. And that's a good point about the roof line. So we could easily do a gable style roof, like an A-line roof, to better match the house.
Yeah, either that or a salt box, just higher on one side than the other.
Yeah, that would work too.
Taylor,
I had a question on what the height is going to be of the shed and what direction the doors are going to be opening, whether it be towards the street, towards the backyard, or towards, I don't know if you can do the side of the neighbors, but if that could be answered, that'd be helpful.
Sure, yeah. So the wall height is 7 feet, and I want to say that the ridge of the roof is an additional 2 feet above that. And then the doors open into the backyard. So the door itself would be on the north side of the shed. And then the doors would open outward, east-west.
Reed,
I have a general comment. So I live in Vista Ridge, and it seems like at least 2/3 of the houses around where I am would want to do the same thing, because there is so little room in the garage if you have 2 cars. I myself was able to figure out a way to put our 2 cars in there, and that without having a shed, but I don't have any of the equipment that Jeff has.
Thank you, Michael. My first question, back to the fire codes question, was top of mind for me as well. So Brandon, we know that, I heard the part about a 5-foot drainage easement. What does the fire code have to say about a shed like this?
Chair, typically when we see separation distances, it's a 5-foot minimum from property line, which is consistent with what we see for necessary separation prior to needing specialized firewall type improvements of full structure, so like homes or other buildings of that sort. So sitting outside of the 5-foot easement, the shed would be consistent with the typical 5-foot setback that we would see between property lines. Taking into consideration also, there would be also a separation between the property line and the next structure on the lot adjacent. Does that answer the question?
I understood the second part, not the first part. The shed will be, from memory, 3 feet from the fence, 2 feet from the house.
Other way around.
So I'm not sure.
2 feet from the
Okay.
fence, 2 feet from the house.
Thank you.
Sure.
So Brandon, I'm not sure what you were trying to tell me.
I apologize. I was thinking of the structure on the opposite lot. In this case, it would require additional fire protection to meet the code, and that would be reviewed during the building permit process.
So say a little more about what you're talking, what would, as an example, what might be needed.
So in this case, there would be a requirement for no windows, or something of that sort to help to ensure that it would meet the requirements for the fire district as they reviewed the requirements.
Okay. A question, and then for the homeowner, part of you could meet the 5-foot restriction by abutting the shed to the garage. I heard what you said about maintaining the air conditioner and the side of the home. If in essence the side of the shed was the side of the home, and it really was, I don't know if attached is the right term or not. But if you see what I mean, if you slid it over, that would seem to be better from both a fire code and a drainage easement perspective. And why is that? Why doesn't that work?
So if I just shifted it over, then I wouldn't be able to get to the side of the house for maintenance. But if I attached it, like you were saying, at that point, it would be cost prohibitive for me to do this because it would require, kind of tying into the house itself. But I will add that there are no windows in the shed and there will be no electrical running to the shed, if that makes any difference.
And my next question had, I understand why you want to put it where you do. An alternative would be to put it in the rear yard instead of the side yard. Is there a reason the rear yard is not an option, or what is?
Yeah, so there's still the, there's still the variance between the rear property line. So I would still have to file for a variance there. But if I was to put it all the way in one corner on one side, there's a tree there that would be in the way. And if I was to put it in the corner on the other side, there is all the electrical, telephone lines, cable, and all that stuff is in that corner. So it would interfere with that.
You've also got the issue of that you wanted to preserve the yard for playing with the kids. I read.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm a family guy. I can appreciate that.
Thank you.
So my primary comment is I can appreciate all of that. I'm worried about the fire hazard. But I'll close my comments for the moment and let's keep going, see what others have to say.
Foreman,
I have no comments.
everyone.
That's everyone? Okay. Okay, so we've done the roll call. And so the next step is following the Q&A that we've just had. Is there anyone that has any additional questions or requires any additional information before we close the public hearing?
I do. I'm not familiar with what happens once a variance is approved in Broomfield. If that is opening it up for other people to have the same variance because this one was approved.
Good question.
It sets a precedent is what I'm saying. When you mentioned you live in Vista Ridge and everyone would like that shed, I'm thinking, okay, so we've got a whole neighborhood with 2 feet of clearance and the possibility of a fire. And then, the rest of Broomfield, if they want to do this. So is this opening up for everyone in the city and county?
Board member, it is not. So each variance or each property owner, if they wanted to come in and make a similar request, would have to go through the same process and present their case or evidence as to why it's warranted. A variance for this property does not sort of set a precedent for all properties in Broomfield.
Can they reference this?
And I can actually speak to that as well. Joni, you have a very good point, because once one neighbor sees it, they think it's okay, and not a lot of them even understand that they have to apply for a variance. And let's say your scenario of everyone's doing it. Well, if the neighbor next door decides to put the same type of shed in 2 feet from the fence, now you've got a shed on one side with 2 feet, and then a shed on the other side with 2 feet. That's 4 feet between two sheds. And that's where the fire issue really comes into play. So I think it's a slippery slope when, and I'm not trying to be mean here, but I think it's a slippery slope when we approve one, it pretty much opens it up for everyone else to be approved for it. Because how do we say no to another one when they're asking for the same thing?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go as well, as where Tom just went, which is if another person, let's say they know about a variance, they come to us, it's highly likely that they will reference the existence of a shed, reference the fact that we have agreed to a variance already, and quickly become extremely unhappy when we grant one variance and not the other. The appearance of, selective hearing, playing favorites, call it what you like, quickly comes into play. I'm worried about that as well.
And I'll add another comment, just because I've seen a lot of committees come and go from architectural review side. And while this board would maybe approve one or two or whatever, the next board coming on, it's very hard for them to comply, because there's so many variances that were approved that it's like, well, why do we approve this one and not this one and everything else? Because we're not on this forever. There's going to be new talent, if you will, coming in, and we need to set a precedence for Broomfield as a whole to be able to have committees down the road be able to approve or disapprove of these items.
Other comments or questions? Brandon, another question from me that, so we talked about the fire codes. The 5 foot from the fence is actually called a drainage easement. What are the risks associated to putting a structure like this in a drainage easement?
Chairman, typically when these sorts of permits, if the variants were approved in the building or the structure were submitted through a building permit application, our engineering staff would review to ensure that it would not cause any drainage issues. Oftentimes in drainage easements, we'll see other structures like retaining walls or other similar items that are necessary, and it does not obstruct drainage, but it would be reviewed during the building permit process.
On the fire thing, could you use hardy board or something like that as a siding for it?
Yeah, I probably could if that would pass code. I was just going to do that. What do they call it? The T111 regular siding, but if hardy board would be it.
Something that's not going to go up in smokes too easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I could probably do that.
My unscientific approach of using Google Maps in that neighborhood definitely can see there are a number of other sheds that seem to be in this area of close to the 2 houses.
Yeah, you'll find pretty much everybody has that.
There's also quite a few that look like they're encroaching on the fence line, but they're on the back of the fences, for a lot of them.
In the back instead of on the side yard, is that what you're saying, Kurt?
Yes, that's my unscientific random scroll through Google Maps.
Yeah, I think if you search harder, you'll see that basically everybody has one against the fence, either in the back or on the side, all through the neighborhood. I just felt like I should go through the proper process of doing this.
And we all actually really appreciate that, just FYI.
Thank you.
Brandon, or do we know, and are we allowed to know, how many homes in that area, pick any geographic area, how many have applied for and been given a variance? Is there a precedent already set?
Chair, I couldn't give you a specific number in this neighborhood, but I would say that there has been a historical number of applications for similar requests that had gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission and had received consideration. And there were a number that had been approved by that board.
By our predecessor board?
That is correct, yes.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to reiterate what Brandon said earlier, and I appreciate everyone's comments, because what we run into with these is legality versus reality. So I think what everyone was talking about as far as your concerns with setting a precedent or setting expectations for other neighbors is definitely, that's the reality. But legally speaking, each of these has to be viewed on its own merits, or if there are negatives as well. So we're not legally setting a precedent if we are allowing it. But like Larry said, with potentially very unhappy people coming through, that is something that we may end up dealing with.
So Brandon, I'll ask another question. Given we've had our predecessors have had variances like this approved, are you comfortable that the fire codes can be adhered to, that the risks can be successfully mitigated when the final agreement is reached between the homeowner and yourself and the building code department? Do you think that likely?
I would say that based on the expertise of the building plans reviewers in our building division, that they would not issue a building permit that doesn't meet applicable codes. They have a standard of life safety that they have to follow.
Thank you.
So it's up to the building department to speak for the fire department here. That's not our responsibility. We may be concerned about it, but somebody else will make that call. Is that what I hear you saying?
That is correct, yes. It can be raised as a concern, but the experts in the building division would make that final judgment.
Great. All right. Well, I think we probably beat that aspect to death.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I will declare the public hearing officially closed. Are there any additional comments from staff on this item? Not hearing any, we will now proceed to the resolution. So just from my reading of the bylaws, and again, since this is our first time, I'll share a bit of information of what I read, which is obviously we can agree to approve or disapprove. There was also a third option, I believe it was mentioned in the bylaws, of we can make a resolution to continue the hearing at a future date. I'm not advocating for it. That was purely a factual statement of what our options are.
We approve with any stipulations?
When we approve, we may include stipulations. Brandon, please confirm.
Cool. Great.
That is correct.
So Brandon, just from a logistical perspective, seems like should we state the conditions up front and then vote? Could you guide me here?
I can. So if there is a board member who would like to make a motion to either approve or deny, or as you said, the third option to continue, they could do so. If a board member wanted to make a motion to approve, they could outline conditions and findings as part of their motion, and then there would be a second, and there could be discussion on the motion.
Got it. So if someone would like to make stipulations, they should probably go first.
I'll move to approve with the stipulations that the roof line and color scheme ties in with the existing home.
I would second that.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we have,
Seconded?
Opal Johansson.
Thank you.
okay, Nanette, would you walk us through the roll to vote on the motion?
Opal Johansson,
Approved.
Hardwin,
Approve.
Orlando,
Approved with the stipulations.
Orman,
Approve.
Nelson,
Approve.
Taylor,
Approve with the stipulations.
Freed.
Approve.
That's everyone.
Thank you. So the motion to adopt resolution number NBOA 2021-1 has passed unanimously.
Chairman, could I interject real quick? So
Yes,
typically
please
with variances, and knowing that this is our first one, the learning curve and getting it down, we'll get it after tonight. Typically for variances, we include findings for approval or denial. So if the motion maker and seconder would like to include any findings, or they could defer to Christine, who has drafted some findings, we can incorporate that into the resolution.
And I apologize. I dropped the ball on that. I should have interjected to make sure that you all had them. So, and just as a point of order, I'm perfectly comfortable going back and just having this redone. That shouldn't be a problem as far as a new motion and adopting findings. I am going to try to share my screen. Let's see.
We can see this there. We can see your screen. Yes.
Okay. So I have findings for approval here. Below that, I have findings for denial. It looks like we'll need the ones for approval. These are examples that track very closely with our regulations. So you can use some of this, you can use all of it. If you make a good base of findings, you don't have to use any of it. You know, from my perspective, making the best possible record, if I ever ended up being a board member, I would probably end up using all of it and then possibly including other for approval as well. And if anyone has any questions before we move forward with this, I'm happy to try to answer those too.
If I could, so Brandon, what we did was we each made comments and we opened the floor and had what I'll call a discussion. And then we had a motion to adopt resolution. Where in those steps would the findings exactly fit in?
Sorry about that. Was struggling to unmute myself.
Mhm.
So typically when the motion is made, the motion maker would say that they make in this case, because it was a recommendation for approval, they recommend to approve resolution number 1 with the following findings. And then they could list their own findings or defer to the attorney's office for assistance. And then they could also add any stipulations or conditions like you all did for this case. So it'd be during the motion making, and then after that, if additional findings were proposed by board members, they could be discussed.
Okay.
So question for Christine, number 5 on the findings. Can you just unpack that a little for me?
Sure, yes. And Brandon, do you have the staff memo, or actually, you know what, I can pull it up. I apologize for jumping all over the place, everyone. Okay, so, okay. Just find this. Okay. Everyone see that code section 2-40-070?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So this is one of the sections that can provide a basis for variances. So this is just by way of example, if there is a tree in the way, or if you have a septic field in your yard, and so a shed that you that you would love to put within the normal setbacks won't fit. Those are the kinds of things that are the basis to show exceptional conditions.
Okay, thanks.
So I believe, Brandon, you're suggesting that we make the motion again, including the findings, which could be a deferral to our attorney, and adding the language that we were previously talking about, adding as, I think we call the stipulation. Is that your suggestion?
Based on the direction that Christine gave, I think that is the appropriate approach, is to make a new motion, including the findings as proposed by the attorney or as proposed by the board member, and then going through the vote again. Yes.
Okay. Let's try that again.
Okay, I will start. I make a motion to approve this with the findings as deferred to the attorney for reading of those. Is that correct, Brandon?
That's totally up to you all, and I'm happy to do it. Kurt, the applicant's property is located on a lot that requires a 5-foot side yard setback. The applicant desires to obtain a variance to allow for a shed in the side yard setback that is 2 feet from the property line. The requested variance will not impair the purpose of the zoning regulations to prevent the overcrowding of land or to avoid an undue concentration of population. The requested variance may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood or the public good, and without substantially impairing the intent and purposes of Title 17 of the Broomfield Municipal Code. By reason of exceptional conditions, the strict application of the regulations would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to or undue hardship upon the applicant. Granting the variance will not authorize any use other than the use permitted in the zoning district, and the planning staff has received a letter of approval from 2 neighbors.
And then we'd add the following stipulation that the shed would meet the roof line of the house and match the color of the house. So motion.
Second. Aye.
So before we vote, Brandon, did that pass muster for you? Is that what you were looking for?
I think that's good to go. Yes, thank you for working through that with us.
Betcha.
Okay, Nanette, please call the roll again.
I'm sorry, I was looking down. Who made the second?
Me, Nelson.
Thank you. Okay, Opag Johansson,
Yes, approve.
Orlando,
Aye.
Orman,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Hardawin,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
That's everyone.
Thank you. The motion to adopt resolution number NBOA 2021-1 has passed unanimously. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. I'm now going to move to the second item of board business is for wild grass filing number 1, lot 7, block 10, variance for a pergola. I will declare the public hearing open. Kayla, will you please give us the staff summary?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for
We can
joining.
hear you.
this evening. Let's see. And if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide for me. Thank you. The applicant has requested the approval of a variance at 14843 Snowcrest Drive to permit the construction of a pergola located approximately 15 feet from the rear property line. Please enter the memorandum and supporting documents into the public record. The property is a single-family dwelling zoned planned unit development and is located in the Wild Grass Filing Number 1 subdivision. The property is located to the west of Snowcrest Drive, adjacent to single-family residence to the northeast and southwest. Next slide, please. The approved Wild Grass Filing Number 1 site development plan has established a required rear yard setback of 25 feet, which does not allow for the proposed pergola to encroach. The applicant would like to request a variance to permit the pergola located approximately 15 feet from the rear property line, an encroachment of approximately 10 feet into the rear yard setback. Next slide, please. The applicant has stated that the proposed pergola will cover the original deck and provide additional shade in the summer months. The applicant also feels that it will add value and appeal to the property. Next slide, please. The applicant has received approval from the HOA and the homeowners of the single-family homes located to the northeast at 14903 Snowcrest Drive and to the southwest at 14833 Snowcrest Drive. There has been no additional correspondence from the surrounding community. Thank you, and that concludes the staff summary.
Thank you for the summary, Ms. Tift. Is the applicant present with us today?
Yes, I'm present. Thank you.
The floor is yours. If you have a presentation or you just want to talk to us, you have 30 minutes and the floor is yours.
Okay, I have no presentation. I think Kayla did a great job of summarizing the location of the pergola as it relates to the home. The home was built in 2006. Originally, the owner built a patio which extends approximately 19 feet from the exit from the house. So it did encroach into the existing rear 25-foot setback. My request is simply to provide a pergola over that existing patio, and not extending more than maybe a foot past that particular patio, to provide a more functional area. It does face an open space. It does face west, and it has some substantial issues of use in the summertime. Midsummer days are very, very hot. We tried, various umbrellas and things like that, and they haven't been effective. The neighborhood area has shown a lot of pergolas that are installed that face the west for the same reason. So we think our purpose is for more functional use of the patio. We think it'll add value to the home. The HOA has approved the pergola, but they were limited within the 10% variance, which was 2.5 feet. And then subjected it to the city review for the remaining variance that I'm requesting. Again, it's approximately a 15-foot variance as opposed to a 25-foot setback on the home. I think that pretty much summarizes it. It has been reviewed by the building committee. Nathan May has been work with me on the design, and issues he had were minor, but they were addressed. And so it moved forward to the planning committee. Perhaps it went the wrong direction, but that's where it is. And Kayla's worked with me, and I think we're at the point we are now.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say at this time.
Appreciate it. Brandon, do we have any members of the public on the phone with us who would like to comment?
Let me check real quick. Sorry about that. I do not see anybody in the queue. We do not.
Thank you. We will now call on each member of the board for comments. Ms. Macon, please call the roll.
Nelson,
Looks nice.
Opal Johansson,
You asked the neighbors on both sides, but how about I know the neighbor right across from you is a little bit more diagonal. Have you reached out to them for approval? Their house does face towards your property.
Oops, I'm sorry.
We can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think as a part of the process, Kayla can help on this perhaps too. There were mailings that were mailed to all the neighbors in the area. I think there were 11 different provided stamps for mailings. I personally received one as well. We've talked to the neighbors because they've come over and said, what's going on? And I've explained to them the situation. And, some of those neighbors, not to the east of me, but on my same side of the street, have pergolas. So they just were asking how we're going, what's the process? And I explained to them the process. So there's been no concerns from the neighbors on any direction of our home.
So the neighbors at 5012 and 5502 on that court, was it Foxgrove Trail? They did not reply, but they were notified. Is that correct?
I would leave that up to the planning division that had issued the various letters of notification.
Yeah,
Perhaps
neighbors within a 200-foot radius were notified, so the owners behind the property would have been notified.
Thank you for that clarification, Kayla. That's all my questions right now.
Taylor,
I have stood on the backyard for about 10 years now, and I know how hot it is. I have someone I know very well lives right next door to you. So I agree with the pergola. You probably are going to need some drapes until about 8 o'clock at night. So you may want to consider that. Thanks.
Reed,
That's the next step, Bob.
Okay, I'm so new that I'm going to make another comment. So this is the second variance that we have a lot of reason to believe that many in the neighborhood would be interested in this variance. In this particular case, I would ask whether the other pergolas were for much the same reason. That is, they had the cement pads built into the area where if they wanted to put a pergola on to cover that cement pad, then they had to go into this variance area. So it's a question of Richard. Are the others also in the same position as you?
I really can't speak to the others. I'm just speaking to the people I'll say the north of me and to the south of me. They both have pergolas or some type of an extended covered area for their use in the hot days. And I don't know that anybody who has any plans. They already have pergolas. That's all I know, from.
Okay, so you don't know the distance from the fence for them?
I don't know that, but I mean, some of them have, been through the city permit process, and I presume they got, involved in that process as well. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Ardoin?
So following up on what Michael was asking, Mr. Rowe, what is the purpose of the 25-foot setback? What is it intending to do?
So typically when it comes to our setbacks, each subdivision will have its own established requirements, and it's to provide separation from structures and to provide usable space, a backyard setback for a usable backyard. That's generally how we would describe it when residents call and ask the purpose of it.
When you've got a setback from an open space, how do you think about that?
So typically, when we look at setbacks from open spaces, we would ensure or try to verify that there's not a negative or detrimental impact to the open space. And then when it comes to variances, again, that determination is deferred to this board.
And the patio or concrete that may be laid, that would not require a variance because it's not a above ground structure, or how does that work?
That is correct. So on grade pavement, a concrete pad or paver stones do not require a permit to be put in.
And let's say it was a deck that was 2 feet off the ground. Is that considered still low enough, or that would require a variance?
A deck over grade, above grade would require a permit, yes.
And so we've heard that there are other pergolas in the neighborhood. Have variances similar to what we're considering today been approved by our predecessor organization?
I can answer that. I believe I provided to Kayla an address, which I may not get the numbers right. Perhaps Kayla can help me with, but there is an address like 5257 or whatever it was, Foxglove Trail or Drive, which has a variance. And they requested a variance of 11 feet for their particular property, and it was approved 2-3 years ago. If you can help me in that, Kayla, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I do see the variance here. And it looks like for a pergola shade cover that was requested in Wildgrass 1 that was approved.
Is it obvious how far it reaches into the backyard, or how far from the back fence it is?
So this particular one was approved 11 feet to the rear fence.
And please remind me, how far is the one we're being requested to approve?
This one is, I believe, 10 feet to the rear property line.
No, this one, excuse me, is 15 feet. 15 feet is the variance requested.
Ah, I did write that down. Thank you very much.
5145 Foxglove also seems to have a pergola on it, tight to the rear property line.
Last question for Richard, you, the homeowner making the request. Did you consider a retractable awning, something that would move out but then move back into the home when not in use?
We did consider that. If you happen to remember the pictures that Kayla provided, the patio has 2 functional areas. One is a fire pit and just kind of a casual seating area. And that could perhaps have an awning on it. The other area is more or less the eating area, and it extends out like 19 feet. And that's an extremely far distance for a awning of that type of thing. And we were concerned also about wind and things like that, because we do face the west and we have some fairly strong winds on occasion. So that was considered, but this looked like the better of the option.
Those are all my questions and comments.
Orman?
I have no questions.
Orlando,
I don't see any problem with this whatsoever.
I do have a comment. Snowcrest actually has all of their backyards raised below. The trail is below, so you're looking up to the houses. So they all actually slope down and then meet the trail and the fences down there. So if you're on the trail, you look up to the house and you look up to the pergola. It's not smack dab in your face.
Yeah, there's probably 30 or 50 feet from the, from the fence line, property fence line to the trail that wraps down through the open space.
Mhm.
Ms. Macon, have we finished the roll call or do we still have more?
that's everyone.
Thank you. Okay, let's see where we're at. So we've done the roll call. Is there anyone that has any additional questions or requires any additional information before I close the public hearing? Not hearing any, I will declare the public hearing officially closed. Are there any additional comments from staff before we proceed?
Chairman, just a friendly reminder that when an individual makes a motion, we'll need to add findings as well.
So we always add findings, even if it's as simple as we want to add the findings proposed by our attorney. Thank you. All right. So again, the public hearing is officially closed. I'm not hearing any additional comments beyond Mr. Rose. So we will now proceed to the resolution. Would someone like?
Propose we seek approval of this proposal with the findings as specified by the, oh, look, they're right there. How handy. The applicant's property is located on a lot that requires a 25-foot rear yard setback. The applicant desires to obtain a variance to allow for a pergola in the rear yard setback that is 15 feet from the property line. The requested variance will not impair the purpose of the zoning regulations to prevent the overcrowding of land or to avoid an undue concentration of population. Requested variance may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood or the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and the purpose of Title 17 of Broomfield Municipal Code. By reason of exceptional conditions and strict applications of the regulations would result in a peculiar, ooh, that's a tough one for me, and exceptional practical difficulties to or undue hardship upon the applicant. Granting the variance will not authorize any use other than the use permitted in the zoning district. The planning staff has received a letter of approval from the Architectural Review Committee and 2 neighbors. With that, yes, that's my proposal.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a proper second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. Ms. Macon, will you call the roll?
Ardoin,
Aye.
Orlando,
Aye.
Mormon,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Opog Johansson,
Aye.
that's everyone.
Thank you. The motion to adopt resolution number NBOA 2021-2 has passed unanimously. Richard, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kayla, for your help.
Thanks, Richard.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. The third item on board business is for Wilcox subdivision S2, lot 46, final plat with a variance for an existing accessory structure. I will declare the public hearing open. Ms. Tift, I believe you're on tap for the staff summary.
It will actually be Shelby Jablon for this item, Chair.
We're switching it up for this last one.
No problem.
All right, can we have the next page, please? Good evening, Chair and members of the board. The applicant has requested approval of a variance at 14641 Clay Street to permit an existing detached garage, which will be located directly adjacent to a proposed property line. Please enter the memorandum and supporting documents into the public record. The property is a single-family dwelling and is located within the Legacy Adams County Agricultural Zone District and is located within the Wilcox subdivision. Property is located to the west side of Clay Street, adjacent to similar single-family residences also zoned A1A to the north, south, and west. And the next slide, please. The Legacy Adams County Agricultural Zone District has established a required side yard setback of 25 feet for accessory structures. The applicant has requested a final plat which will result in a new property line located directly adjacent to an existing detached garage on site. The final plat will be reviewed by the Land Use Review Commission at an upcoming hearing. The applicant would like to request a variance to permit the existing structure, which has been highlighted in yellow in the provided images. The area to the north of the existing garage will be utilized exclusively as an access drive for the proposed rear lot, and the variance is not anticipated to impact any of the neighboring property owners. Next slide, please. The image on screen highlights the existing garage and its location on the parcel. If the final plat is approved by the Land Use Review Commission, the applicant will maintain ownership of both parcels until a buyer is found for the new parcel to the west. Property is not located within an HOA, and staff has not received any communication in opposition to this proposal. Thank you. That concludes the summary.
Thank you. The applicant presentation is now in order. Is the applicant or an applicant representative present? And if so, do you wish to be heard?
I am. I'm here. I'm Caitlin Brewer. Thanks for having me. So I think Shelby covered quite a lot. The only thing that I would like to add is that, and I don't know if it's relevant or not, but oh no, I think I'm good actually. I think she covered everything.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe, do we have any public on the phone who may want to add any comments?
Chairman, we do not.
Okay, we will now proceed to the step where we will call on each member of the board for comments and questions. Ms. Macon, please call the roll.
Nelson,
Is the garage, does it have an apartment in it, or is it just, it's a garage and that's what it is?
Sorry, it has an apartment in it upstairs, yes, and we generally use it for family coming to visit. Mm-hmm. It is, for full disclosure, it is permitted as an Airbnb, but we haven't used it as such for a year and 3 months.
Okay. And you're planning to sell the rear lot? Is it going on the market once you get this okay?
That was the thing that I wasn't sure if it was relevant. No, we don't know what our plan is yet. The market is crazy and it is very tempting to just sell that off, but we really love the mountain views. And so we've considered whether we want to build back there ourselves and sell this front lot, or keep the front lot and rent it, or we don't know yet. It's not going to market right away. That is for sure.
Okay.
Opag Johansson.
All right, I have two mouses and I had the wrong one going. I see from my unofficial Google search, there seems to be a structure along that path right now. Is that just an old Google map, or is that something that have to be removed at this point?
Great question. That is in the process of being removed right now. It's an old barn and being taken out.
And was there a notification to the neighbors regarding converting that portion of your property into an easement for access to the back lot?
Yes, and we actually have a letter of, I guess, approval, support from the neighbor that's directly contiguous. And I don't know if Karen and Simon are on here, but I didn't get a letter, but our other neighbors that are they're on the cul-de-sac, they are also support it. They don't have a problem with it.
That's all my questions at this time. Thank you.
Reed,
I'm fine.
Orlando,
I initially thought that this was completely fine, and I still pretty much do. My only concern is the Airbnb efforts and the rentability of it, and just a lot of cities are cracking down on it, and I'm all too familiar with under the 30-day rentals and taxation and everything else. So I think it's a bigger subject, but for the structure itself, I see zero problem with it.
Norman,
No problem.
Hardwin,
So the structure is not a new structure. So Mr. Rowe, if this were a new structure, the appropriate people would look at fire codes and everything relative to it being next to a property line and not 5 feet away. How do any risks of drainage easement, fire get handled from a risk assessment perspective in a case like we have here where the structure is existing and we're actually moving the lines around?
Chairman, the fire district reviewed that building when it was permitted. So it had been reviewed through the appropriate process at permitting time.
But that's my whole point. It was reviewed assuming a certain distance on the side, behind it, and everything else that's now about to change.
Correct. And I'll defer to Shelby to discuss what the fire district role was in the final plat process.
So North Metro does receive the referral for the final plat, and we actually worked with them directly considerably on this plat, trying to get the right width and size for access. So they are fully aware of the structure and its location. They have signed off on it. And so has our engineering division as well.
So when you use the term final plat, you're talking about the new plat?
Yes, the proposed property lines.
Thank you. In the new plat, is there an intention that a street would eventually run in that 25-foot section? Is that really what we're talking about here?
Like a driveway? It's just a driveway. There will never be a street. It's only the proposed subdivision is 2 lots. So it would create what is referred to, I think of it as a frying pan, but it's apparently a flagpole lot. So it would just be a driveway, not a street.
So Mr. Rowe, if the homeowner sold to someone else, what would be the distinction between calling it a driveway and a street? And what would it be in your terminology?
Chairman, the drive access would be a driveway for that lot, whether it's owned by the applicant or sold off to a future owner. It would still serve as a driveway.
Thank you.
Question.
Those are all my questions and comments.
Sorry about that.
Tom, hold on one second. A point of order. We're going to finish the roll call, then we'll open it up to everybody. and we'll get to you.
Taylor?
I just have a question. Is the current fixture used as a garage on the first floor and then an apartment on the second floor?
It is garage on the floor, yes, and there's the
Okay. I'm not sure about Broomfield laws, but I know in Cherry Creek, you're not allowed to put a living structure over a garage. Is that not so in Broomfield?
I know that our zoning is strange because it's legacy Adams zoning, but I think Shelby definitely has a better answer for that.
Thank you.
So we do allow accessory dwelling units to be located attached to an existing accessory garage. So that would not be a concern. And we will review the accessory structure and just make sure it is meeting all the requirements of our ADUs, but the location itself is not an issue.
That was everyone.
Thank you. So let's see. Is there anyone that has any additional questions or requires any additional information before I close the public hearing?
Just real quick, I'm curious as to why, just as a process standpoint, if this has been permitted and already approved by the city and the inspectors and everything else, why would this come to the board?
So because the applicant is in the process of requesting a final plat, which would result in a new property line, that is why it is coming before you. So the new property line will be much closer than the existing property lines that are at the site.
Understood. Thank you so much.
So if I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your name already.
Caitlin?
Who was it? No, not you, Caitlin. Who was answering the last question?
Shelby.
Shelby. So Shelby, procedurally, many steps have been taken before coming to the Neighborhood Board of Adjustment. What is already approved? Are the new boundaries approved, or in essence, is the Neighborhood Board of Adjustment the final voice to actually sign on the dotted line and approve the new plat? Or what's the right way to think about this?
Right now, you guys are examining the variance request. The final plat has not been approved yet, but the final plat cannot move forward to LERC approval unless we get this kind of preemptive variance approval.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any additional questions or additional information before I
have
close the public hearing? Please do.
One comment that I don't want to shovel that driveway. Just say. Sorry, had to lighten it up.
You don't.
Okay, hearing no more comments or questions, I will declare the public hearing officially closed. Are there any additional comments from staff before we proceed?
There are not, thank you.
Hearing none, we will now proceed to the resolution. So back to how we do that. Yes, since you're getting good at this,
I'm getting this down. I have a motion to make. I'm going to pause while Christina gets something on the screen to make my life much easier. But I have a motion to approve a resolution NBOA 2021-3. I believe that's the right one. With the following finding: the applicant's property is located on a lot that requires a 25-foot side yard setback. The applicant desires to obtain the variance to allow for an existing garage in the side yard setback that is 0 feet from the property line. The requested variance will not impair the purpose of the zoning regulations to prevent the overcrowding of land or to avoid an undue concentration of population. The requested variance may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood or the public good, and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of Title 17 of the Broomfield Municipal Code. By reason of exceptional conditions, the strict application of the regulations would result in a peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to or undue hardship upon the applicant. And the granting of the variance will not authorize any use other than the use permitted in the zoning district. I so motion.
Tom Orlando seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
Opag Johansson,
Aye.
Hardawin,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Orman,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Orlando.
Aye.
That's everyone.
Thank you. The motion to adopt resolution number NBOA 2021-3 has passed unanimously. Homeowner, thank you for joining us, and that concludes this portion of our meeting.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, moving forward, special reports. No special reports scheduled for discussion this evening. Mr. Rowe, did anything come up in the meantime?
No, sir.
Board members' corner. That concludes the board agenda for this evening. Is there any other business to come before the board? As chair, I would just like, if there are any comments of things that didn't seem to go well, or just any observations for me, I'm all ears.
I think we came up a nice steep learning curve pretty quickly. I give us all
Pretty happy.
applause.
Excellent leadership. Excellent leadership.
Can I make one comment?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So we had two variances that were likely to be very common to many developments. Is there any good reason to bring that point up in the findings?
Christine,
So the
you wanna
part-
take that one?
Sorry, I was trying to.
Want me to restate that?
No, that's okay. Thank you. And it's a good question. I just want to make sure that I think it through. So generally speaking, there is not really a reason to include that in your findings because variances that have previously been granted or that are likely to be common don't have any effect on this variance. So one of the things we are looking at is the potential effect on the neighborhood, but it's only of the variance that you're seeing that night. On the other hand, if you've made a good case in your motion and you also include that, I'm not going to totally freak out. So it's not technically speaking really a legal basis for approval, but I do realize that it is something that is probably going to come up a lot for you all.
Okay, in the future, I will keep that in mind as I have to think about it.
The city wants the opportunity to tap the brakes pretty much at any point in time. on these things rather than greasing the process by continuing to reference the fact that many other neighbors already have these things. Is that
I agree.
basically?
That's a way to think of it.
It-
But I need more time to think about it.
Absolutely. Variances are strange and they can be very hard to make decisions on, given what the criteria are. And then, you know, we also get into personal feelings. And David, yes, you know, I am all for consistency, but you know, if I continue to hammer home that that these are to be viewed just on their own merits, the way you put it is definitely a good way to put it.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it fair to ask the staff to
Go. Sorry.
Sorry, Tom. Is it fair to ask the staff to provide, you know, neighboring variances of similar nature?
We are going to talk about that. I don't know if Brandon has made a decision on that yet, but we have, you know, I messaged back and forth with the staff during the meeting to make sure everything is going smoothly, and that was one of the things that, since it did keep coming up, we asked the question about whether that is something that needs to be done. I don't know in Broomfield how easy that would be. Certainly, if it's easy, I suspect it will happen, but it's good to ask about.
Because our unofficial Google search are, you know, not necessarily for open code or seeing what we're looking at when we do this.
And I was going to add that one thing I would take recognition to is HOAs tend to be more restrictive than CCOB that I have seen. Number one. Number two, we're also dealing with the good people, the ones that are actually applying. Most people just go ahead and do it and then ask for forgiveness later. So we got to take that into consideration, that we're going to see a lot of good applications coming through because they're doing what they know is right or think should be right, versus the people that are trying to just pull one over on.
Yeah, what happens to those folks, the people that bootleg it and then get caught? Do they come in front of us for a spanking, or what happens?
You will see ones where there is something that has already been put in place, and either they've just realized it and they come to us, or they may have been flagged by code compliance, and then they come to, and you know, we could have lots of different situations, but I've seen lots of cases where, unfortunately, the person bought the property with the non-conforming use already on it. And it's just up to you all to listen to that particular case and make your decision.
I just had one of those actually, a client or a client of a client that bought a house that the previous seller had painted unapproved HD colors, and now they're getting in trouble because they bought the house and they have to repaint at a ticket of probably $4,000, and they're pretty mad.
Yep, it happens.
Yeah.
So Christine, in terms of researching other variances, I think I'm adding the obvious, which is whether that work research is done up front or not. I think that question's going to come up frequently live at the meeting. I think it's important that some research be done beforehand, because otherwise we're then trying to do it on the fly right here and now when we're in a time critical situation, which puts us in an awkward position.
Chairman, as Christine said, we were chatting back and forth. We can definitely do that moving forward for you guys.
Okay. Any other business questions, comments?
Are we likely to be live next week or next month?
My understanding is that we are rapidly approaching at least the board members and staff being in person. The silver lining of that is I think that we meet later in the month. So City Council and the Land Use Review Commission get to work out those bugs, and then we can smoothly transition into that. But we'll definitely keep the board in the loop as to what the next meeting looks like, whether it's virtual or in person.
And do we have access to, can we like bring our laptops in? Because I like to look at all the stuff electronically at the same time. I have 4 screens going right now. So are we able to bring in our own, or is there stuff that equipment we use from the city for this type of stuff?
Yep. So when we come back to in person, we'll be using the council chambers, which has the dais and the table. So you're welcome to bring paper documents or your electronic devices and connect to the Wi-Fi here through the guest Wi-Fi and use that during meetings.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And could you remind us the date of the next meeting?
I knew you were going to ask that question. It will be June 16th. The 3rd Wednesday of June.
Okay, final call. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone.